Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everybody. Pasta Jardula here.
And I'm Fiorella.
And today we have a great guest who he was with the Maryland Natural Resources Police for 27 years, and he retired holding the rank of major. He also taught criminal justice at Anne Arundel Community College for 3 years, and he's now a political commentator for Sputnik Radio. Excuse me. He's a big fan of Bill Withers. Garland Nixon's here with us today. How you doing, Garland?
I am just wonderful.
And I hope you like Bill Withers. I like to have a little fun, throw it in there, so you know.
Yeah. Oh, well, yes. Very big. Didn't he was the Lovely Day? Is that Bill Withers?
Lovely day.
Yes.
Lovely day.
Yeah.
And ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
Yeah, oh, gotta love Bill Withers.
All right, so let's just jump into this because I've been dying to have you on. I think that you are one of those political commentators out there that doesn't get enough play. Everything you have to say is amazing. In fact, when people were asking about Russiagate, I kind of directed them, for people who are in the beginning level who haven't followed the novella and the saga that was Russiagate. I said, check out Garland Nixon's video on Russiagate. It's so awesome. But you are a retired police officer, whatnot. And there's been a lot of talk out there. And me personally, I think the messaging of the Democratic Party a lot of times, or the leftists, is wrong. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that in nuanced that what they're talking about might not be right, but when it comes to like believe women, a lot of people kind of took that the wrong way and said, how are we going to believe every single woman? I surely don't believe what Nancy Pelosi has to say, or Michelle Bachmann for that matter. But now we have this message of defund the police, right? Where a lot of people say, whoa, we're not going to get rid of police departments altogether. It's a bad message, but yet there's a lot of nuance to defund the police, being the fact that they spend a lot more money on our police departments than education in some areas. What are your overall thoughts of the message of defund the police?
Well, I've always been I 100% agree with the the substance of the argument. Absolutely. However, yeah, I'm one of the people that listen to it and I say, I don't like it. Believe it or not, I was working with some friends with John Conyers' office during say around 2008, 2009 during the Obamacare battle on Capitol Hill. And I was doing some working on messaging and things like that with some friends with John Conyers' office, a couple other places. And we were the ones, back then, the term was single payer. And there were people saying, no, Medicare for all is better. And I was me and a couple of friends of mine were in on that discussion, moving it from single payer to Medicare for all. And I was a Medicare for all person because my point was, single payer sounds too technical. Sounds good. It sounds technical. It sounds, it doesn't grab you, right? And then Medicare for all, well, guess what? Everything's there. What is it? Medicare. Who gets it? Everybody. So I thought, great. Defund the police. Here's the way I look at it. If you have to start explaining what it is after you say, oh, I want to do this, and people are like, what way? I can take it this way. It's not. So I think the concept is perfect, but I think the messaging, defund the police. It's the thing about it is this: if your message is not defined, your adversaries will define it for you. But they won't define it for you. They'll define it for themselves. So that's what's happened. It's like defund the police. And then here's what happens. What has to happen if somebody says, defund the police? I'm for defunding the police. Somebody has to say, what do you mean by that? Medicare for all. Nobody's got to ask a question. It's all there. It's Medicare. It's for who? Everybody. So that's why I felt like you could have come up, you had to play with it, but I think there was a better name because I know what you mean, but I'm on your side.
Yeah, I thought demilitarize the police, reimagine the police, reform the police. What would you have said? I know you've thought about this before. What message would you have portrayed?
Well, see, what's interesting? It's funny that you say that because I've had to go on a bunch of actually, believe it or not, Newsmax. I went on there for several times, and that's the far right. And it's funny that you said reimagine the police because that's exactly what I said, because they attacked it right off the bat. Defund the police. Everybody's going to die. When you call 911, don't you want the police there? So you see where they're going to go. And I'm like, well, what they're really saying here is to reimagine the police. That's not what they're saying. They're saying get rid of all police. So now I have to have an argument that I don't want to have when we know what we mean. And that is that it's like what it kind of reminds me of? It's like the Pentagon. we're taking all of this money and spending it on brute force to go around the world and force people to do things. What happens if we were to take some of the Pentagon money and move it to diplomacy and then move it to home to strengthening America? You know what I mean? That how do we use our money in a way that makes us a better nation as opposed to brute force to go beat up on people? And that's what the law enforcement is. It's brute force. It's a blunt object to go around and beat people into submission, and it doesn't work.
So based on what you've seen throughout the years, is our police department, is our justice system, and including the police department and police, are they inherently racist?
Okay, let me give you an example. I'm glad you asked that. Yes. However, you know, when I was, so I'm, I don't know, I'm not going to give away my age, but I was young. So I wanted a shiny car. So I went out and bought a BMW 525, and that thing was pretty and shiny. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And I was a cop, but I was a young black guy, right? And I got on I like the Raiders. I had on an LA Raiders hat with the skull and crossbow. You know what I mean? Oh, okay, right. It's fun. So there's a 7-Eleven near me. I go into 7-Eleven. It'll take about a minute. I'll tell the story, but it makes a point. I go into 7-Eleven, talk to the guy in there that I talk to every day, get my cup of coffee, walk out. I come back the next day. He's like laughing. I said, what happened? He says, yeah. He says, there was a couple people in here and they said, I know how that guy got that car. He's a drug dealer. And he said, I said, nah, he's a cop. I know him. And they were all like, oh, kind of quiet, right? Here's my point. They weren't cops, were they? They saw me in a shiny BMW and thought, hey, there's a drug dealer. Here's my point. Cops don't come into our society. They come out of our society. The people in the criminal justice system don't come into our society. They come out of our society. You see, if now, here's the funny thing about it. The exact same car, the exact same 7-Eleven. I pulled into that 7-Eleven a couple of weeks ago and I bought it. I had a phone installed and something went bad. It blew a fuse and the whole car just crapped out on me, right? And this county officer walks up and I'm walking around and I look and I'm like, yeah, my car's broke down. And he's looking at like he's doing an investigation. He's looking at the tag numbers. He's looking at the VIN numbers. He saw a young black guy with a nice car, and I was a drug dealer, exactly like them. The only difference is they didn't have the authority that he has. So one of the issues that we have with law enforcement is this. It's America won't admit that these people come out of our society and that this is America. And any number of other people, if you gave them the authority to do the same thing, they would view the world exactly the same thing. There's 10 white guys standing there and I drive by in a BMW and 9 of them say he's a drug dealer, but one of them's a cop. That guy pulls me over. The only difference is the rest of them can't. So that's what I learned from law enforcement. The other thing I'll say about law enforcement is this. People say law enforcement changes people. I say something different based on 27 years of experience. It's not that law enforcement so much changes people. That can. You get in a culture and it can change you. Think about this. What types of people are normally attracted to a job like that, right?
Yeah.
A person who tends to see the world black and white and militaristic, they tend to be right wing, etc. So it's not like you go into you go there and it turns you into Joe Nazi. It's that the people who would more likely be attracted to law enforcement are more the type of person who's going to be militaristic, who's going to see everything in black and white, right and wrong, be far more conservative, etc. That's my opinion on it.
So if this is coming then from society though, so then the criminal justice system is what should be tackled then.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of issues. Let me give you a perfect example here. A perfect example. One of the things that could change the issues of police accountability, right? You're talking to a person who was the commander of the investigations division, right? So which included internal affairs, all of that, right? Okay, so the two of you are best of friends, or you work together. For all I know, you hate each other's guts, but you work together, okay? You're together all the time, right? One of you gets in trouble, and you're not, and I got to assign you to look into him or him to look into you. The idea that you can be unbiased is absurd. You know each other. You can't be unbiased. So I've got a person who's going to investigate someone that's on a bowling team on this guy or on a bowling league with this guy on Thursday nights. That's what you end up. What has to happen is that whenever there's allegations, really any allegations of misconduct, but particularly allegations of brutality, allegations that involve violence or something like that towards members of the public, police departments cannot investigate themselves.
Yeah.
It has to be outside of the department, and it can't be under like the locals prosecutor's office that works with the cops anywhere, because all they're going to do is hire retired cops. So somebody's going to retire. I've seen that kind of stuff before. These investigators in the AG's office and stuff, they always hire retired cops. So now they're going to investigate their buddies still that they went to the academy with, and you're going to get the same thing. So accountability has to be, you know what, it's like we talk about the Pentagon and you need civilian oversight, right? Which we don't have, but theoretically we should. Okay, that's what you need, some level of civilian oversight. Now, if you argue, okay, I don't want civilian oversight, I don't want the people out there in the community, why they have no training. Okay, all right, that's an argument. But civilian oversight, you have investigators that are civilians, investigators that are attorneys, they can't be cops, and you won't see what you see all the time, that police officers can do anything in the world, and the investigation comes back that they didn't do anything wrong. And then why do they get off? Because they have an investigation from a police department that says they didn't do anything wrong. How are you ever going to get a conviction in court when the defendant, even if you charge them, the internal affairs portion of the agency acts as part of their defense team?
Yeah.
So you're never going to ever get a conviction on them.
Okay, so Garland, what you're saying that, and we talk about it all the time, the police can't investigate the police. So I often talk about, like, if I have a list of 10 types of reforms, 10 different lines of reform of things we can do to reform the police and change them, would that be the most important one in your mind, that the police shouldn't investigate the police? Or is there something that's a close second or even more important than that?
That would be number one. Why is that? Because why are people so furious? They're furious. Look, there's a lot of cops, and you know that inevitably police officers and someone in that crowd is going to do something they shouldn't do. But if they are not held accountable, then it becomes a culture without accountability, and everyone in that culture knows they can do whatever they want and get away with it. And the public has no confidence that there'll be justice. So when this guy shoots whoever, the public's like, this person's going to get off anyway. And they're usually right. So the first thing you have to do is address public confidence. And of course, when you talk about what a cop can do, they can take your liberty, they can take your life, right? So you have to have civilian accountability for those two particular things, for unlawful and illegal arrests, and for any type of brutality or violence. You have to have civilian oversight, even if the civilian is not outside, is not, just community people. If it's attorneys or whoever that are investigating it that are not former cops, they can't be former cops.
How do we fix that though? But how do we fix that? You said yourself that if it's not a police officer, they don't understand the line of work, right? So they're investigating something they have no idea. They can never stand in the boots of that person. So how do we square that circle and actually hire somebody who can be fair in holding these people accountable?
That's why I said attorneys, because an attorney knows the line of work better than a cop knows it. The attorney knows the law. They know the line of work. And I've worked in investigations. I've worked with attorneys. I've done a lot of stuff, but I've done a lot of investigations with attorneys. I worked with the Attorney General's office doing investigations into hazardous materials, violations, people that, through methyl ethyl horrible around the environment, and we'd go to investigate it and find out who it was. But the bottom line is I work with attorneys. Attorneys are very competent at that. So you can have, particularly when you have issues of brutality and violence, you have attorneys that do the investigations. Hey, who better can look at the law, look at the actions, compare the action to law, and say whether or not they did it. So I think that would be reasonable. And you could even do things, one of the things that I did, Maryland State Police had a lawsuit against the state of Maryland years ago. And they put together like a group of people that was like an oversight committee, right? And what they did was, it was like the NAACP, the ACLU, and the Maryland State Police got to choose them. So they chose it's like the state police chose 5 or whatever, and then half of the people, and then NAACP chose the other half, and then both of them had to come together and choose somebody that they could both come to agree on, and that was me. But you can do those kinds of things when it comes to hiring. So if you're going to hire some attorneys that are going to investigate cops for brutality, violent killings, things of that nature, you can have a civilian oversight committee made up of members of the community that are involved in the hiring process and the vetting and looking at this person's history and things of that nature. And and they have to make a presentation so that the community is happy that you've brought in some attorneys that they feel comfortable with. And then boom, you move forward, and now you have somebody to investigate it. And these people understand, and they have to present to the state or whatever municipality is, and to the community board, that they are unbiased, that they have a history of being unbiased, that they can be unbiased, and that is approved by this community board or whatever before they get started. I think that's a good idea, because you've got to bring the community in. But you're right in that there are a lot of complicated issues when it comes to law enforcement that members of the community might not understand, but they have a right to be a part of the process.
Got it.
All right. So do you think that our police department needs to be demilitarized? And do you have negative criticisms towards Obama for arming police departments with all the military gear from Iraq bases?
Well, I'm glad you came to the right person to talk about that, because I was involved in that from the beginning. And I can tell you the real scoop on that, because I was involved in it. I was our officers at one time. I ran our Homeland Security Division. I was the commander of the Homeland Security Division. And we had in Maryland, we had MEMA, the Maryland Emergency Management Administration. I worked with them. And so I am very familiar with this issue. And let me tell you what, it is not what you think it's about. It's always about money. That's what it was about. It's about money. So what happened? I'll give you the short story, the short story. Look, these companies that make tanks or military equipment, the guns, the MP5s, all of the stuff that the people wear, that the soldiers wear when they're out on patrol, right? Their market was limited. So they're like, we need a new market. We need to just make more of this stuff and sell it. I know we got millions of cops in it. So what do? You go to Congress and you say to lobby to Congress, Congress, you really should grant the state of Maryland $20 million to buy stuff for their cops. What? Stuff that we got that we want to sell their cops. Like what? Well, let's see. Oh, hold on a minute. Let me go check what I got. What can we sell the cops? Hey, we got guns and uniforms. Okay. Yeah. We were just saying the cops got to have guns and you see what I mean? It was about money. I remember one time I get called and they're like, okay, we've got these, what do they call them? NBC suits, right? You know what that stands for? Nuclear, biological, chemical. We're going to give you $60,000 worth for your agency. And I said, we don't need them. They said, why? I said, we're cops. I said, if there's some biological issue, we are in the green zone. Our job is to stay outside of the red zone and to provide security so people don't go in there. And then you got like hazmat people. You got people that go into the green zone. That ain't what we do. Our guys ain't putting those things on. Don't waste your $60,000. Okay. You know what happened 2 months later? I got I got a call. They'll be delivering your NBC suits tomorrow at 8 a.m. What the heck? I checked. Yep. Your boss signed off on them. You're going to get them. You know what I did with them? I stuck them in the quartermaster's barn thing and left them there for 2 years because that was the shelf life, and threw them in the trash can after 2 years. This is about money. Now, unfortunately, if you give people a toy, they're going to want to play with it. So once you arm the cops, once you put all this stuff on them and put them, of course, they're going to use it. They weren't, but it wasn't that it was given to the cops in order to make them use it. It was about money. It was about these companies making lots of money. That's what it was all about, a boondoggle. But it turned out now they've got these things. When people protest, of course, they're going to use them abusively, et cetera. But it's because they have them.
Yeah. I was just going to say, though, but in a country like America, where it's so easy to get guns, even assault rifles, isn't there certain situations, since poverty has grown so much and crime has grown, that you have these situations where some police officers do need some of this military hardware to combat stuff? And in fact, if they don't, like, arm the police officers or give them the necessary means to protect themselves, a situation happens, and it seems like Congress will overcompensate for what had happened.
Well, but keep in mind, you have special operations teams, so that if something happens, you can call for special operations teams. I mean, you know, you have to decide how heavily you're going to arm the cops. And again, what happens is, and you know, I don't even recognize cops anymore. Is it a cop, or is there a couple of guys from the 101st Airborne here in McDonald's getting a cup of coffee? When I was there, we had it was like a dress pants, shiny Corofam shoes, right? When I started, you had to get your stuff clean. Now, these guys, that's like all camo with the black boots. They look like the 101st Airborne, and which means they act like the 101st Airborne. We had brass, we had to shine. You know, cops used to have white shirts and things, and they looked like a part of society. Now they look like an occupying force in Baghdad, and they act like an occupying. You know, like you and I. Look, if you put on a suit, you think a little bit different. You act a little bit different when you got on a suit and tie. You know, everybody knows when you're dressed up. Yeah, you dress bummy, you act a little bit drunk. When you dress like a friggin', you know, Navy SEAL, you're gonna act like one. You're gonna think like one, and that's you know, I don't like it myself.
How do you feel about Proud Boys and Antifa? And then also, if you know anything about the Boogaloo Boys.
You know, a couple of things. These are my feelings. A lot of people may not agree. I think it's unfortunate that we talk so much about such a tiny minority, such a tiny extreme minority. There are so few of them. Right? There are so few Proud Boys. I remember when I first learned about the Proud Boys, I was doing a radio show with this guy, and he was kind of a far right winger, and he's like, the Proud Boys. I'm like, who? Huh? And I heard of them, right? And I looked into it, and I'm like, okay, you know, whatever, the Proud Boys. I get it. You know, they're kind of like a clandestinely gay right wing. That's the truth. I could care less, but that's who they are, right? And so I'm like, whatever, right? And he's like, oh, the Proud Boys and Antifa. That's all he wanted to talk about. He was a guy from Breitbart, you know? So that's all. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about that extremist crap all the time. And there's not a lot of them. And now we've got America thinking that there's legions of Proud Boys and Antifa. They're going to literally overthrow us when and I always feel like this, the ruling elite always wants us to be frightened of something except them, always wants us to focus on something except them. And so am I concerned about the Proud Boys and Antifa? No. You know what I'm concerned about? Silicon Valley, Wall Street, the military industrial complex. You know what I mean? I ain't talking about, to me, the Proud Boys, they're a bunch of schmucks. You know, so I don't get overly concerned about a bunch of schmucks. I do get overly concerned about a bunch of people who own Twitter and Wall Street banks and things of that nature.
Gotcha. Well, what do you think about police unions that, you know, do you think they're too strong to prevent any real type of accountability for cops who go over the line? Because a lot of people point to the police unions as being strong as protecting their own.
Yes, I do. Because to me, it's immoral, a lot of the positions that the police unions take. Of course, I was in one, you know, FOP, Fraternal Order of Police. However, keep in mind something. So I'm in the FOP, right? So then we had a governor who came in who was fairly progressive, and he came up with something called SLEOLA, the State Law Enforcement Officers Labor Association. And that allowed us, right, as state employees, to negotiate our benefits. So the reality is we didn't really need the FOP. We still were members of the FOP, but the truth is, as long as when the state of Maryland, right, as a progressive governor, pretty progressive, the state of Maryland provided an option for us to negotiate for our benefits. So we didn't need the FOP. And the FOP is exactly what you know it is. You know what I mean? They stand up for cops no matter what, especially when they're wrong, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of municipalities, what a municipality should do is provide the ability for their law enforcement officers to negotiate for their benefits. And then they don't need the FOP. They can still be in it, but they don't have to have it. It would make the FOP redundant. That's what happened. But the FOP is still around. And I think what is end up happening in police culture in America is the cops know the FOP or whatever, you know, police benevolent association, depending on what town you're in, are there to get them out of trouble no matter what. And here's a bigger problem. This is a huge problem. In a lot of states, they have what we have in Maryland, LEO-BOR, Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, or something down that line. And what it does is it gives a police officer far more rights when they're accused of a crime or accused of wrongdoing than the average citizen. So you'll have a cop where they'll actually like have it in statute, where if a cop is accused of something, before they make a statement, they're allowed to see the video if there's video of them doing something. Well, for God's sake, if you see the video, you can come up pretty easily. Excuse me, I'm bouncing all over the place here. But if you see the video, if you're accused of a crime and you see the video first, you can just make up a story that works with the video.
Yeah.
So that's what you have to look at. The Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights agreements and most of your police departments, especially a lot of your cities, they'll have an agreement that a labor agreement that they negotiate every 3, 5, 6, 7 years, right? And here's what happens. Most people don't know this, but I know it because I was involved in this. So here's what happens. You are the mayor and I'm negotiating on behalf of the police department, right? So I come in and ask you for a 15% raise, and knowing that you can't do it because the budget's too tight. And you're like, well, I want to give you guys a raise, but I don't have 15%, right? So you can't give us a raise. Well, you know what? I understand that. I'm willing to take some other things. So in lieu of a raise, which I already knew I wasn't going to get anyway, I already have a list of proposals that I want for you. Well, you know, whenever officers are accused of a crime, we want them to be able to see the video first. Well, that sounds absurd and most people aren't going to bite it, but I already got you over a barrel because you couldn't give me the raise, right? Gotcha. And so that's how they slip in and they ask for something big that they can't get. They have a list of proposals and then they get these absurd proposals and nobody realizes it until a cop shoots somebody and people are like, well, why'd they allow the cop to look at the video before he gave a statement? Well, you may find this hard to believe, but they negotiated into their labor agreement. And people are like, how the hell did they negotiate that into their labor agreement? In lieu of a raise, the city gave them whatever they wanted.
So apart from reimagining the police and the independent investigation and the oversight committee and demilitarization, what other types of reforms are logical in your mind that would actually help improve the relationship between police and communities? Because we see policing is very different in other countries like Europe, in the continent, in Europe and in the EU and France, let's say, even Russia, the police are completely different than they are here.
See, one of the problems that I think we have to grasp is grab a hold of is this, and the people like us, I think, who genuinely want to see change. And I'm not saying that it's futile. I'm not saying that you give up, but here's what I'm saying. We got to accept that some of this is American culture. You know, I always say, you know, look, you cannot, we arbitrarily separate our domestic policy from our foreign policy, right? Let me tell you like this. And I always like to use analogies. You got some guy, he goes to the bar and he gets in a fight. He gets in 2 fights. He leaves the bar, he pulls over to the side of the road, it stops at a light, he gets in a fight arguing with a guy on the way home, right? This guy has got an issue with, violence. When he comes home, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to beat his wife and kids. That's who this guy is, right? The U.S., if you look at our foreign policy, what do? We go around the world, we beat the crap out of brown people and bomb them. And then we come home and we do the same thing. We're heavy-handed. I don't believe if this guy this imaginary guy that I just came up with, if you said, how are we going to get him to stop beating his wife? There's no way in the world, if you don't address the fact that he has a problem with violence, he ain't going to stop beating his wife and keep fighting guys at the bar and in the street. He must stop fighting. So I believe we arbitrarily divide our foreign policy from our from our domestic policy. The real difference between the two is grammatical. We call it something different. In reality, what we do away from the America is what we do here. And as long as we pretend that there's some kind of a difference, and you've got all of these woke people, and let me tell you this, you got all of these so-called liberals who are willing to ignore the violence we do around the world.
Yeah.
And then say, we got to look out for brown people here. Oh yeah, but what about the country that we're starving through sanctions and the Muslims that we're bombing? And they look at you like they just saw a ghost. They don't want to talk about that. Well, what they're trying to do is futile. You're not going to separate these things and address one of them. And so as long as we are a violent nation, as long as we as Americans think that they're on a luxury liner when really they're on a pirate ship, and we're going around the world stealing people's resources, murdering and bombing brown people at will, they're going to do this at home.
Yeah.
That's why Malcolm X referred to Black communities as internal colonies. That's how the empire treats colonies out there, and that's how it treats the colonies here. And that's how the empire treats anybody that pushes back against it out there, and it does the same thing here.
I was going to say, you sound very MLK here, talking about foreign policy and relating it to how things are back home. We often talk about Fred Hampton and his eyes on what was going on overseas, whatnot. But we've talked about a lot of the things we can change with the police department stuff. But I tend to believe that everybody who enters the police force is a bad person. I've always been taught that it was 3 reasons why somebody wants to be a cop. Number 1, they are very insecure and they need that badge to make them feel more secure. Number 2, their family was involved with police officing, so they went involved. And number 3 was they wanted to do something that was internally good and help society out. And therefore they joined the police department. How do you think, other than the left that is very polarizing and the right can be the far right, very polarizing the way they look at cops, how do you feel that the average citizen looks at police officers across America?
You know, unfortunately, and you left out one other thing. It's a pretty good job and it's got benefits. There's a lot of people that do that. You know, I was in college and I was like, I think I might want to be a fireman. And I was looking into that and I looked into law enforcement and I'm like, yeah, right now that looks like something I might want to do. A lot of people become cops, particularly as the economy's gotten worse over the year, because it pays a decent salary and it has good benefits and you get a good retirement. So, there's that too. I think that unfortunately, I've had people are like, yeah, when they find out I'm an ex-cop, they'll be like, thank you for your service. You guys are heroes. No, I'm not a hero. One thing I might have done that I could, I maybe say is heroic. Okay. But for the most part, all of those years, I did my job. I was paid to do it. I'm not a hero. It was not volunteer work. I wasn't sitting home and decided to run outside and pull somebody out of a car. They paid me and they paid me well, and it was a choice. So I don't feel like I'm a hero. So I feel like people make a mistake because they turn the cops into heroes. And since they are in their minds, they're heroes. Well, here's the thing about it. If you watch a movie, the hero, everything they do is good. The villain, everything they do is bad. So just the concept of viewing cops as heroes means it is automatically assumed that everything they do is good. And when they are accused of doing something wrong, it is automatically, the assumption is that they're innocent because they're, quote, heroes. And so I think that's the big error. They're human beings. They're people. You put 10 cops together, you got 10 people together. And you're going to find good, bad, and everything else. So that's people see them as heroes. They're not heroes. They're just human beings.
Gotcha. Bam, got anything else?
So there's this divide on the left between people who want to talk to people they disagree with, whether they're on the right or whether they're libertarians, whether they may, not agree with your immigration, with the way we view immigration. And then the other side wants to not do that and it's calling everybody, a racist, a fascist, a Nazi. Where do you see that going in terms of the police state? Because we've seen the crackdown now by the national security state with this new domestic terrorist prevention act that they're trying to push for the third time. And like, where do you see that coming into play with all these groups festering and all these people kind of being used as FBI informants on their own relatives? Anybody could be labeled a Nazi. Anybody could be labeled a right-wing terrorist. They're saying that this is only related to white supremacists and terrorists, but we know from the Patriot Act and the Espionage Act that could totally be expanded to include multiple groups of people.
And our history says it will be mostly pointed towards the left. I mean, that's what the history says in America. America's been a right-wing country as far as its leadership is concerned. As far as the people who steer the ship has been a far right-wing country. Now, the other people, that's a whole different and much more nuanced conversation. So the bottom line is this. I think the elite ruling class is happy as long as people who are in the same economic class are beating each other over the head. You know, when I saw you know, the George Floyd protests, and I saw people running in the street and cops beating people, pushing old men down, cracking their heads and all that. And a lot of people were like, wow, the cops are evil. Oh, the protesters are wrong. And you know what I saw? I saw a bunch of people. I was a cop. I was in a union, which means what? I was a blue collar working class people. I saw a bunch of working class people beating the crap out of each other. Yeah. Meanwhile, some were cops, some were on the left, some were on the right. They were beating each other senseless. And a bunch of billionaires and a bunch of Wall Street people were sitting back there in their ivory towers just grinning, saying, man, look at those idiots beat themselves to death. This is great for us because they ain't looking at us right now. Hey, look over there. That guy's trying to do something. And then I lift your wallet right out of your pocket. That's what they did. And that's the way I see it as far as I'm concerned. Now, remember something about me. I was in law enforcement, mostly all right wingers around me, right? 90%. Okay, and where was it? I was on TV for many, many years. Where? Fox News. I was on Fox everywhere. You name it, I was on Fox News all the time, like 3-4 times a week for probably 8 or 9 years. Not quite 3-4 times a week, but many weeks, right? All the shows, Laura Ingraham, you name it, O'Reilly Factor, you name it, you can find video of me on Fox News everywhere. And Eric Bolling, that was my buddy. I agree with him on nothing politically. We are polar opposites politically. I like him, he's my buddy. He's my good friend, right? So I believe that I don't see any reason why if I disagree with someone, I have to hate him or dislike them or demonize them. Now, so I like as far as the whole Jimmy Dore interviewing, you know, people are freaking out. Oh my God, he interviewed a Boogaloo boy. Here's the way I look at it. If you don't watch the video, you ain't got to watch it. Everybody's got a gun to your head saying you must watch Jimmy Dore or else. I watched the video. It seemed okay to me. I'll put it like this. A year or two ago, when CNN interviewed Richard Spencer, I didn't hear all the woke authoritarians like, oh my God, CNN's Richard Spencer, that's unacceptable. I watched that video. And you know why? Because I wanted to see what the heck Richard Spencer had to say. That is journalism to me. You guys, I wouldn't care if the devil himself, if I actually believed in a devil, but let's say I did. And the devil himself came up and said, hey, I'm coming to the Convo Couch. Hey, guess what? I'm watching that video. Why not? So this idea of these woke authoritarians running around telling everybody we have a list of people here, of the approved people that you can talk to. Oh my God, he's not on the approved people list. You can't talk to him or her. It's laughable to me. Absolutely laughable. And that's this domestic terrorism stuff. It's all about boxing people in, saying who's approved and who's not. But screw that. Everybody's approved as far as I'm concerned.
You got anything else?
No.
Garland, I think that's a great way to end the show. A great statement and stuff. And I appreciate you coming on talking about policing. Listen, I love you on your foreign policy views, and I can't wait to get you back on so we can talk some foreign policy with you. Garland, can you tell everybody out there where they can find you, where they can reach you, hanging out with Eric Bolling? Let us know.
Yeah, not hanging out with him anymore. But look, I even went on the show on The Blaze. When he moved to The Blaze, he called me like, Garland, you got to come on. And I went on there. That's hilarious. Wow. And Newsmax, the people from Newsmax called. I was on there with a bunch of people.
How many times have you been canceled by the left? Jeez.
Oh, I don't know, because I don't pay any attention to them. I welcome their hate. How's that? As FDR said. At any rate, at Garland Nixon on Twitter. Follow me, Garland Nixon on YouTube. Anybody can email me anytime. It's garlandn@gmail.com, and just plain old Garland Nixon on Facebook. You'll just I like that we did a lot of talking about racism and about the police. So I am on the National Board of Directors for the American Civil Liberties Union. I like to be transparent about that. So if people start searching my name and they see all this ACLU stuff, don't be shocked.
Yeah, well, you have a great opinion. It's very nuanced. I love it. Are you still on Sputnik? Are you still doing a radio show there?
Yes, every day. It's called the Critical Hour. It's it's Monday through Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. with Dr. Wilmer Leon. I also have a show every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. on the Pacifica. It's a 50,000 watt station in Washington, D.C., WPFW 89.3 FM. And I totally freak out on that show. I mean, I just go nuts on that show every time. I mean, if you listen to it, you're just going to think I'm a complete madman.
We'll probably love you even more.
Listen.
And if you need us on, we promise I'll try. I promise I won't curse because I'll watch my language and stuff.
Well, let's talk foreign policy.
Thank you so much for joining us
for sure next time. I love foreign policy.
Well, we're gonna get into it. We love talking foreign policy here.
That's me, man.
I know. I watch your stuff. Garland Nixon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Convo Couch with Pastor Jardula.
Fiorella.
Garland Nixon with us.
Convo out. Bye, guys.
All right, thanks.